Thank you very much. Just remind members, electronic devices should be switched off, excluding your tablet devices you're using to view your committee pack. Members, just a brief overview of today's business. Consideration of the Committee for Employment and Learning End of Session report, a departmental briefing on the European Social Fund, and a briefing from the Northern Ireland Council for Ethnic Minorities Voices of Change report 2014. Members, apologies. I have apologies from Phil Flanagan. No. Members, there's no chairperson's business since our last meeting. Draft minutes of our last meeting on the 16th of September are page 6 of your pack. Members, I just have your agreement that those are correct record of that meeting.
Great.
I'll sign it being correct. Members, matters arising at page 19. And one of those are the agreed action points from the committee meeting on the 16th. Members, anything else arising rather than those listed? Content? Agreed. Members, moving on then to correspondence, is at page 22 onwards. I was just draw your attendance. Page 32 is correspondence from Phil Flanagan regarding the proposed committee visit to a social enterprise that employs young people with learning difficulties.
Turns out they don't buy them on Friday.
Members, Phil had raised this at last week's meeting. It turns out just from the detail, they're not employees, they just bring them in on a Friday, and the only day that would suit for a visit is actually a Friday. So I don't know how members feel about fitting it as a formal visit.
It's probably one that they have been done a skill yet, have we?
It's Garrison, it's right on the board. It's about 2.5 hours from here.
On a Friday. Is
Maybe try we take it up with Phil.
just have a chat with them, see if there's anything with any work right.
You could go.
I would have no difficulty going with it, because it does give you a cross-section.
Well, I mean, we could have it that we set up a Friday date and then any members that want to go can
Let
go.
us know. Members content with that, isn't it?
Agreed, yeah.
Okay. Members, then table page 4 is correspondence from the Association of Hispanics of Great Britain and Ireland regarding the closure of the School of Languages at the University of Ulster. Members, would just point out that in our forward work programme, UUR coming up on the 21st of
21st of October.
next month,
And Queen's are briefing us on the 7th.
and Queen's will be briefing us on the 7th in regard to languages. So.
Very good.
And we've also asked for a research paper to be done on the closure of modern languages.
Okay, members, so that's where we are in relation to that. Members content? Okay, members, tabled then at page 7 is information on Level Ground Coffee Shop in Donald, which also offers training and supported employment to young people with learning disabilities, age 16 plus.
It opened on the 1st of September and it's in the Elim Pentecostal Church on the East Link Road in Dundonald, and it's basically for young people 16 plus to get experience. They don't get paid, but they get an MVQ qualification at the end of it, and it's a community enterprise type thing. It's literally only opened.
Good to visit.
Members, I think what we're possibly looking at is one of our later committee days. Actually have the committee meeting in here and then go down, because only is in the Newton Ards Road, go down afterwards.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Just to see around it.
Yeah.
Members can tell me about that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I think I heard a bit on today on the radio about them, you know. I think they're to be commended in what they're doing, because it's a voluntary organisation stepping out to do this, to fill a gap that's there at this moment in time, and I think they are to be commended, and we should maybe go and visit it.
Okay, when you
Very not sure this right was on this morning. I only caught the tail end of it.
Yeah,
didn't hear that.
yeah, it was on this morning, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, members, correspondence action is agreed. Okay. Members, draft forward work programme is at page 49. As you can see, the draft forward work programme is tabled up till the 9th of December, and other briefings may be scheduled as they arise. Members content to note? Okay, members, consideration of the Committee for Employment and Learning End of Session report is at page 53. Members, just to advise that the committee end of session reports a short paper on the committee's work and achievements from the previous session, and that on agreement by the committee will be published on the committee's website by the end of September. Members, do you want a couple of minutes, or have you had a chance to look?
Yeah.
Looks fine.
Fine.
Members content
Yeah.
with it? Okay. So members content we're agreed to publish on the committee
Yes.
webpage?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, moving on to agenda item 8 is the departmental briefing on the European Social. Are they not here yet? No. Right. How'd you do that?
Yeah, Owen Murphy did a paper for you as the researcher yesterday, and it was sent out to you. The appendix, some of the figures, there's a few typos in the appendices, and Owen's frantically working on it now to fix it, and it's going to be emailed down to us, and then Johnny's going to email it to you on your tablet so that you can see it. So if you just sort of ignore the figures for now, he'll get them to us as soon as he can.
Okay, members, so your packs, it's page 62 is the departmental briefing papers, an update on the European Social Fund programmes, and then also table to page 9 is that research paper, but as Kathy said, that's with
The written part of it's okay, it's the appendices that aren't. Some typos in it, it was quite apparent when you looked at it that there were extra figures put in.
each other's cousin.
The other cousin. She took over.
Right, okay.
She didn't come up and
Why are they not here?
they're not in the minutes of those. I would agree. She put them in.
Hey folks, just welcome Colin Jack, Director of Strategy, European Employment Relations, Sheila McNeil, Deputy Director of Strategy, Conor Brady, Head of the European Unit, and Heather Cousins, Deputy Secretary. Colin or Heather, are you leading?
Yes, I'll just say a couple of introductory remarks and then really it's over to yourselves for questions. We're providing you now with an updated paper because this is an ever progressing situation and therefore, you know,
Sorry,
things
is this updated from what we received?
from what you
packs?
received, yes, it's just updating the progress with processing claims, etc. And it's providing you with a breakdown of the technical assistance expenditure which was requested of us. That's the very back page. And it's just...
Heather, I'm just going to... Members, do you want to take a couple of minutes just to read through this? We've just got it before we get into this.
Okay,
All
no
right.
problem.
Heather, you didn't track changes or anything? That's what you did provide us?
But I can tell you basically what has changed. The breakdown at the back has been added to it, which is additional.
Okay.
And then there's also just an update on the paragraph on the judicial reviews. And that's basically the main changes. The rest is just textual changes. And I will then give you an update on the actual payments and that when you're
Where's the
doing
judicial
question and
review
answer.
section, Sheila? Sorry about that.
It's on the
Page 3.
page 3. I'm sorry, there's a typo there. It said August. It should be September, but it's been handwritten changed.
Okay. Heather, do you want to...
Okay.
Members go down and move on?
Yes, I mean, I believe that ESF was covered last week as well when the Minister was at the committee. So this paper really is giving you facts and figures to update you on where we are with the new programme, 2014 to 2020, the old programme, where we are in relation to that, and in relation to the partial suspension, and then it also goes into some detail on technical assistance. Also, I would like to introduce the committee to Conor Brady, who has returned to the department, and Conor will be taking over as head of the managing authority from end of November, when John Noble is moving to European policy. So that's a change in the management team. Conor at the moment then is concentrating on managing the new programme, and John is still involved with making sure that the old programme is going towards closure. And Sheila obviously is overseeing all of it.
Okay, John not available today, no?
No, well, because Sheila is overseeing everything, we thought it was more appropriate for Sheila to be here and also for Conor to answer any questions about the new programme. So, okay. On the old programme then, we're making progress with paying the claims. There's been a lot of work involved in trying to get all of the final claims in, and I believe at the minute we are waiting for 2 claims to come in. This is very late in the day. Under the letters of offer, claims were supposed to come in within 2 months of the end of the programme. We're considerably over that period. We've issued several reminders. We've still got 2 that are outstanding. One for Training for Women Network and the other one for Royal Mencap. Those are the outstanding ones.
Sorry, what's the next one?
Sorry?
What's the second one? do you
Royal
think?
Mencap. Okay. And both of those organisations have issues where we're hoping that they will get the claims into us. We have considerable number of claims that are in the system being at various stages of vouching and validation and quality assurance. And it's worth pointing out that 65 of those claims just came in within the last month. So it's quite a hive of activity. There's been a lot of money expended between July and now, both on the accelerated payments process that Minister put in place in July, and also then clearing the claims that come in. There also would be an issue with some of the claims, the final certificates not being in, and claims cannot be completed until the final match funding certificate is with us. So again, that's been a complication. That's the old programme. As I say, I'm giving you an overview, but any detailed questions that you have, the team can answer those detailed questions. On the new programme, all the projects accepted their letters of offer, which was very encouraging, and all match funding certificates were in, with the exception of one project which has now secured match funding and need to readjust their project budget. For quite a number of the projects, they didn't get the full amount of match funding that they were anticipating, so there will be reprofiling that will go on to take account of that. We are still overcommitted in terms of the ESF funding, but now by a smaller amount. And we're hoping that that overcommitment will sort itself out with underspends that are inevitable due to delays in projects getting started. One of the issues that has always been a problem with claims coming in is we require relevant documentation, which again is specified in the letters of offer, and sometimes projects are slow to get that in. We've had quite extensive engagement with the new projects. We had all of the providers in for 2 information seminars. One was for brand new project promoters who've not been involved with ESF before, and then the second one was for those project promoters that previously had projects under ESF, to ensure that they were aware of the changes between the old programme and the new programme. So those were very positive engagements, and we also are responding to lots of questions from the project promoters. And if you want more detail on that, Conor will be able to give you detail. We have had requests in for advance payments, 36 in total, and all of those have been processed and issued. We have had claims in as well, and those claims are now in the process of being vouched. So there is progress. We are obviously determined to ensure that the new programme does not fall foul of the same issues that we had with the old programme. So we wish to get any issues cleared as quickly as possible. We got good news yesterday. We had a letter from the Commission lifting the partial suspension to the old programme. So that means that we can proceed with putting in claims and being able to close the programme by December 2015. a lot of hard work went into ensuring that that was the case, and we are obviously very pleased to be in that position, and it's important now that we continue with the progress we have been making and don't take our foot off the pedal. So we'll be ensuring that that is the case. And then we have provided you with some detail on technical assistance, which is something I am not fully familiar with, so I won't attempt to answer any questions on technical assistance. I'll pass over to people who are more able to do that. So really that's all I want to say by way of overview, and then we're very happy to take questions from yourselves.
Okay. Thanks, Heather. Heather, can I just ask, you said you received a letter yesterday from the Commission lifting suspension on the old programme.
Yes.
My understanding from previous presentations here that you had actually taken the ESF projects out of that European structure funding and putting it directly from departmental monies.
So what we had done was that the priority that was the problem priority was priority 1, which was largely voluntary and community sector, but there also was some funding of training for success. Was it?
And programme-led
apprenticeships within that priority. So what we're able to do is put in more claims for those programmes, which we have paid from departmental funds, and therefore we pay the voluntary and community sector with that departmental funding that would then be freed up.
So when they
So it's a substitution.
Yeah, but when they lifted the suspension, it's actually then for the training success in the programme.
Yes, it's for that
For
priority.
apprenticeships,
It's
rather
for
than-
that priority. It's for priority 1, but we have said we won't be claiming any more voluntary and community expenditure under priority 1.
But when the voluntary sector's taken out of that, is that not simply removing the part that the Commission had the problem with or had the concern with?
Well, it is, yes.
So that's how they were able to lift the suspension then?
Yes.
Yes, but they also
So it's not because of any really
it's
cleaning
because-
up of procedure or
No,
technicality?
it is, but we've still had to clean up the procedures, which we then apply to the new expenditure that we're putting in. So they had to be convinced that what we'd done with the procedures was fit for purpose before they would lift the suspension.
Yeah, but there's no projects then to...
No, but it's a similar process. We have to put in claims and vouch the claims for the government expenditure in the same way as we had to put in claims and vouch the claims for the voluntary and community expenditure. So it's the same processes that are applied to both programmes, and they had to be convinced that they were fit for purpose.
Yeah, but surely the department can make those a lot easier.
Training for Success is external training providers, so that information has to be inspected and verified in the same way. It's got a lower error rate, but it still is, we're still required to do
How
vouching.
many project promoters?
I don't know how many are involved in Training for Success.
I think it's probably about 100 and something
All put in?
organisations.
How many would be submitting claims?
Well, what we do is we pull the claims together for the different organisations.
The department puts the claim in?
And the department puts the claim in, yes. That what actually was one of the conditions from the European Commission to allow us was that we actually removed the voluntary community and agreed that we would not claim those within priority 1. That was one of the conditions for lifting the suspension.
What I'm trying to get around is you just basically took out the problem area.
Well, it was a high-risk area due to the procedures.
Okay. In regards to judicial reviews, there's 2 still to be heard on the 2nd of October. How does that affect further claims for their projects or even the reputation of the department in this process?
Well, there's one of them is up for mention, which is it was the mention on.
There are 2 judicial reviews for which papers have been filed. One of them has had a leave hearing originally scheduled for the 17th of September, but the party taking the judicial review asked for extra information and an extension to the deadline. So that will now be mentioned in court on the 2nd of October, but there's been no date fixed for a leave hearing for that particular application. The other application has been listed for a leave hearing for judicial review on the 2nd of October. So that's where the 2 applications sit at the moment.
Okay. How confident are you that those are?
Well, the second one is for an individual, it's not for one of the actual organisations or projects. So it's unknown until it's heard at the court. I don't know that we can presume what the outcome might be, but I suppose we'd be pretty confident.
Okay, in regards, I suppose, to, there's quite a lot of members down, so I want to be brief. In regards to the new programme, I've already had contact from a number of organisations getting into difficulties with cash flow because of slow vouching or late vouching. I think last week we were told there's 35 members currently in the department, or in the unit. How many is working on vouching and getting payments out for the new system, new programme?
Yes, there's actually been an update on that. When I told you last week we had four project officers in the new programme, I've actually got another 2 now, so I have 6 claims inspectors in that. There's 35 of the claims have now been vouched, and there's 1 actually being paid. As we get the old claims, for the old programme cleared, more of those project officers will move over. Originally, way back before I came in the branch, there were 10, and that's spread over. There's different sections in the branch, and there's now, if you give me a few minutes, I'll come back and
See,
ask
this
what I do have.
the question, I'm not, head count, if you're up to 6 claim inspectors, that's fine.
Yeah.
What I'm really trying to say is time-wise for the new programme kicking in, there is a risk, or I suppose a perception out there because of legacy in the old programme that late vouching, poor performance for the department, an awful lot of vulnerable community sectors are already starting to struggle with cash flow.
There is a big issue within the new claims and the new organisations that they haven't actually sent in the full documentation, and we can't pay until they do. I mean, an update now is that there's 67 claims in, but there's 25 of those have not sent the full documentation in, and we have been paying. There's 51 have claimed their advance, and 43 of those have actually been paid. The 5% advance. The rest do not have the right documentation in, so they have been advised of what is still outstanding. And there has been reminders that have gone out to all the projects that they do need all this documentation in to release the payment of the claim.
In regard to the 5% advance payment, is that 5% of the full project they can claim down?
Yes, and the way it works this time in the new
Sorry,
programme...
they can claim 5% of their full project?
Yes, they can, of that, what's of that year?
Of the year.
Yes, it's 5% of the year, and then that is repaid at the end of the year. Whereas in the old programme, they could claim 30% of the full project, and it wasn't repaid until the end of the programme, into the last year. But that's the way the regulations are this time from Europe.
Okay, so you're telling me it's 5% of the annual cost can be prepaid?
Yes, and from their profile, yes.
It's not 5% of direct cost?
Of their...
Direct cost or annual cost?
It's their annual cost.
Annual cost?
Yes.
So any organisation can claim 5% annual cost?
Yes.
Okay. Bronwyn?
Okay, thank you, Chair, and you've actually covered some of my questions. Just regarding the vouching and payments, can you clarify how many staff is working on that at the moment?
In the new programme, there's 4, with 2 more moving over now, so that'll be 6. That's 6 project officers. So there's also quality assurance staff, and then management in that team as well. There's 2 levels of quality assurance and management.
Okay, because the feedback that we're getting from the sector is that this process is extremely slow. So when do you anticipate the first wave of vouching to be completed?
Well, there is 35 already completed.
Yes, but when will it be overall completed?
That'll be an ongoing process. As the claims come in, that will be they'll be vouched as they come in.
Okay. So when will the second wave of vouching commence?
Well, they're being scheduled in for visits now.
Right, okay, and has the department any contingency plans in place if there are any further delays in vouching or payments? Because there's going to be a lot of groups out there who are going to have to drop their programmes because of these delays.
Well, part of the problem is that they haven't sent in their documentation, so their full documentation must come in before we can actually pay them. So that is a message that we have been sending to them as well. But if there are people saying to you, then do please say to them to check if they have all their documentation in.
I think I would also say that, we had all of the project promoters in the last 2 months, and we weren't getting that level of complaints from the project promoters. It is a two-way process. There is an onus on them to get the documentation in, just as there is an onus on us to get the vouching visits done, and we're working on that as quickly as we can. And where organisations raise with us particular problems about cash flow, we do respond.
I know there's concerns out there that it's going to take the department maybe, a possibility of another 2 months, to start up or complete, the second wave of vouching. Will it take that long?
Vouching is continuous. Those 6 staff, that is their job, and they continually vouch. When they've one claim, they go on to the next claim, so it is a continual process. It's not waves. As the claims come in, they are scheduled for visits. The vouching takes place and all the activity around that, and then the payment is made if all the documentation is there.
Some of the organisations claim funding once a month, some of them claim once a quarter, and so every time a claim comes in it has to be vouched. In the new programme, the process of vouching will be simpler than in the old programme because we have a simplified costs model where all we actually vouch is the staff costs, and then the organisation is entitled to a 40% amount on top of that to cover overhead costs. So we won't be in the territory that we were with the last programme where vouching had to go down to the level of participants' bus tickets and so on. We have changed that to make the process more streamlined both for us and for the projects. So that's one thing that we've done to try and make sure we don't get into the problems that we did in the previous programme. The other thing that we're doing is we're continually redeploying staff to respond to the pressures as they change. So the work to complete all the payments under the old programme, although obviously those payments are now not being made from ESF, they're being paid from departmental funds. We put extra staff onto that initially to get that work finished. As that work winds down, we will then be able to redeploy more staff onto the payments under the new programme. We've also been in a position to borrow staff from elsewhere in my division and elsewhere in the department to vouch the claims which we have to submit for the programmes, the Training for Success and programme-led apprenticeships that we need to claim from the Commission before the end of the year to make sure that we receive all the receipts that Northern Ireland's entitled to under the old programme. So we're continually reviewing what the pressures are and making sure that we redeploy staff to meet those pressures.
Okay. Tom Buchanan, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And again, just on that particular issue, because this is something where the problem was in the older programme, was the fact that groups submitted their application for their payment, if you like, their invoice or whatever, and they had to wait an age until they got that paid out. Now, can we be given that assurance? Can we take away from the committee this morning that assurance that the new programme is going to be different, that whenever these groups submit their invoice or whatever for payment, that's going to be made fairly swiftly rather than hanging on and on and on like it happened before, where groups were waiting. I mean, I talked to groups last time and they were waiting months on payment that had never been put out to them.
Yes, you can have that assurance. We have significantly improved our processes in terms of our tracking information about the claims that organisations submit. It is essential that they provide all the information that they're required to provide, but certainly we have learned a number of lessons from the previous programme, and we've changed our procedures to make sure those issues don't happen again.
Yeah, and with regard to the questions asked last week, I think that they have been fairly well covered in this particular issue here. But can I just ask one thing following on from that? Can the technical assistance used in the 2007-13 programme, can that still be used now to prepare for the new programme for 2014-25?
Technically it can be used for the new programme, but there is no money in it, so it will be the technical assistance for the new programme that will be used for the new programme.
Fair enough.
Okay. Anna?
Thank you, Chair. And I can understand why the projects are worried about cash flow. Because as you say, previously, they got an advance of 35%, and now it's down to just 5%. So that process really need to be very swift. Have you got a target to say if people submit their claims with all the documentation that, you know, they'll be paid within, say, 10 days?
They're paid immediately. It's checked to make sure they have the documentation. If they don't, they will get an email to advise what's outstanding, and then the payment is released.
What sort of documentation would you require? I'm surprised that people still don't know what type of...
There's quite a few documents that are required, including the profiling of their money, which quite a few of them don't actually have. Some of them also had to re-profile due to their reduced match funding, and we're still waiting for information on that as well.
Okay. Okay. Well, that brings me on to the re-profiling you mentioned earlier, Heather. So you're saying quite a lot of organisations, because they didn't get the full amount of match funding, so you would, then what, you're going to re-profile them. So does that mean that you're going to give them less money and going to be a smaller project?
Yes, I mean, I don't know that it's, I don't know how many are in that position. Some of them did get their full match funding. There were some that didn't. I think the gap the difference is about 3 million between the total that we were anticipating and then what came in. So spread over the 66 organisations, that's not necessarily a lot per organisation. But some of them will then have to look at, if that's what they've got, then, you know, they still have to stick to the 40%, the 25% from us, and then the match funding amount. It has to be those percentages, no matter what. So they then have to reprofile, knowing what they're getting in match funding, and that might have a knock-on effect on the quantum of their project.
Yeah.
And that will then have to be taken through to the economic appraisal to make sure that that still holds firm. And that's what's going on at the moment. But we don't anticipate major problems with any of that.
Okay.
And as I say, we were quite substantially overcommitted at the outset. We still have an overcommitment, but it's not as significant as it was at the beginning.
Would that be a long delay then before those
No,
projects?
the projects have started, are going, and that's why we've had the number of claims in. Conor, did you want to say anything about how the new programme is going?
No, well, all I was going to add was the number of projects who have had to reprofile on the back of match funding changes. So to date, there have been 24 projects who haven't received the full amount of match funding as anticipated in their application. It's about a third in terms of the numbers, but it's nowhere near a third in terms of the overall financial profile. So of those 24, 14 have already submitted their reprofiled positions, with another 10 still to do so. But it's not a particularly onerous task, and we don't anticipate having a major impact in terms of how the projects are going to run forward.
The amount of funding overall that is now the subject of the revised letters of offers after the revisions in match funding is less than 10% below what was originally offered, and in the current funding environment, actually my view is organisations have done pretty well in terms of attracting match funding given the overall financial environment.
It's certainly a better picture than we feared at the beginning.
Yes, I know organisations are were worried about, you know, the ability to get match funding with the cuts in different departments and agencies as well. So, thank you.
Okay, Rob?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. Just before I go on that question, I've said here before, I think I'm a very firm believer in a fairly hands-on approach when you're dealing with many organisations. It works both ways, it's a two-way street. And I would be concerned, and I think a big lot of the problems from early on this was a breakdown in communication and how it should have been dealt with, and taking groups through it and feeding them with information. But even the sending of emails of their documentation is ours. There's many groups that would have received it or have got the wherewithal, the expertise and the financial capability to be able to deal with that. But there are other groups there that struggle and are getting match funding or getting the thing. And is there any process where following up on an email that somebody will either phone the group to take them through the thing, or visit them and say, look, if you need help with this, we'll provide the help to back you up on this?
Well, they can't provide help to develop their claim because that goes against them then vouching the claim. But they do, there will be a project officer for each project, and they will be there to advise them going forward. And it's not just emails, they do ring them. And where it's a 5% claim, they won't actually be going out to vouch because it's paid on the documentation. But when there's a claim, they will actually be out on site with them.
Okay, thanks.
Also in this new programme, Sheila has established a quarterly forum for all project providers to come in on a quarterly basis together to hear. And that's a two-way communication. They'll be able to put issues on the agenda, and likewise we will have issues on the agenda. So we're very conscious of the need to have better communication.
You see, in terms of many of the groups who didn't receive funding, I think it was raised at this committee, Chair, that it was essential that they be taken through the reasons why their application had been refused in the first place, because there's quite a lot of groups out there that feel hard done by. And in terms of process, the assessment and the final knockback. Has there been a process that if people or groups phone, that the department will sit down with them and take them through the A to Z of where they went wrong in an application?
I know there was an appeal process. Sorry, it was before my time, but there was an appeal process. And then anybody who did appeal, they could come in and they were given, because I know there was a couple of organisations did take up on that and come in and got an indication of where they had scored low or scored high.
Is there any possibility, and it's just because there are groups that do approach you on this, and that if we could get some information from any ask for that information. The second thing was that many of the groups that didn't succeed in getting funding would be looked upon as grassroots groups that interface with people furthest away from the labour market. There is obviously concerns that many of the groups encouraged, especially women, to come back into the education. Is there any way that, or as a department anyway, that can track where people who may have had those positions and many of the groups lost their funding, where they went to? Did they move away from education? Did they go back into their communities without ever hoping to go back into education again? Because I think that was one of the biggest concerns that we had, and that was groups who lost out on this. That the people that they were educating or training up would be lost forever to any further education or training.
Well, if you're talking about groups who weren't successful, we don't monitor what happens to those organisations beyond the projects that actually are successful. But I mean, there are other areas of business within the department looking after those with further education or work. Accessing work needs. You've got further education, you've got employment service, and you've got programmes within that. And you've also got the review recently of youth training that actually looked at all of the programmes within the department and came up with the strategy for the levels of training, and it's all to do with progression. And that's why the European Social Funding is allocated the technical, the level 1, so that we can progress those who are furthest away and may not actually come in to the further education colleges or even to the employment service for support, so that they can progress them on to level 2 and then move in hopefully to further education into work or whatever.
It's also important to remember that the total amount of money that we've allocated under the new programme is higher than under the old programme, and the amount going to the volunteering community sector overall is higher. So while there are organisations that weren't successful in the new programme that were in the old programme, there are other organisations that weren't in the old programme that have come in. So there are opportunities at that grassroots level, and I mean we have mapped the organisations that we're supporting and the areas that they're providing support. So there should be, even if one organisation hasn't been successful, there should be others serving people in the same area.
And I think probably maybe also to remember is that they have been assessed on quality as well, and it's the quality of the provision to the end person, the participant. So it's the participant really the programme is around rather than the organisations themselves. I know where you're coming from in talking about the organisations, but at the end of the programme is really there for the participants, and it's the quality of the provision to them that is very important in the programme.
I think that, and I do understand that, Sheila, but I think one of the difficulties that have is that many of the groups, and even just, and it's actually quite good information source that is provided, and especially by postcode and giving you breakdown on that. But I think one of the things that certainly I've argued in the past is that there are groups that are community. There are groups that would be classed as semi-statutory by many people that live here, and there are groups that are statutory. You know, the groups that have been, and especially in the broad women's sector, the groups that have been mostly affected by the funding have been in the broad women's sector that deal with many people at the core face of trying to get back into education and training. And it's where they go to or what happens. So when you say the community and voluntary sector, it's even a broad difference between the community and voluntary sector and what way people view them. And often in these things, you know, because, when I say it again, because people haven't got the financial or expertise, wherewithal to be able to deal with this, they're the groups that usually lose out, because the groups that end up getting are the ones that financially buy in or train up people to be able to do the applications for them, and that's what the concern is. And in terms of the education, there are plenty of people who have been encouraged into a community setting for education, and once that goes, they'll not go anywhere else because they feel safe and comfortable in their surroundings, so they're lost to the system. And that's when I was talking about tracking or looking at where they go to. Are they lost out there for forever and a day? It's just a point I want to make.
Okay, Pat.
Good morning. Very well. In terms of the Chair's initial question on the vouching or verification, is it only internal staff that are carrying out that exercise, or is outside agencies doing that work?
We have loaned staff from all over our department, and I'm actually bringing in more staff now at the moment to vouch the alternative claims that we're making for the TFS and PLAs. We do have, I have a call-off contract that I've identified that I'm looking at the moment to bring in staff to try and relieve the pressure. I haven't progressed that yet because I've only just found that out. And if we can, I'm currently scheduling all the visits, and whatever extra resource I'll need, I will access that. And that will be extra.
Okay, going back to the monies owed on the 2713 programme, how much money does the department still have to pay out on that programme?
Yes, that's as I said last Wednesday, it was 7.5 million, I think, last week. It's now down to 7.3 million. Potentially that's maximum, and that's to do with that will reduce because projects do underspend. They will have to, there's advance payments that have to be recouped, and there's also, I forget what the third one is now, there's the advance payments where they underspend, and that will reduce it. And I'm sorry, an ineligible expenditure.
One of the key areas of concern that came up, particularly with the groups, and obviously with the groups who were unsuccessful, was the exit strategy in terms of trying to secure money to make their staff redundant. Is the department absolutely certain that they have exhausted all measures, that the monies through ESF cannot be used to subvent to the groups who are under enormous pressure, who are working on the ESF, to allow the monies to go to the groups?
I mean, we have looked at potential of paying money outside what their letter of offer is, and we can't. They are restricted to what their letter of offer amount is. We cannot go beyond that. That is what the contract is. And the match funding that comes from Europe matches what they actually have spent themselves of their own match money, their match funding money.
So was a query put in directly to Europe to ask specifically, can existing ESF money be used to allow redundancy payments?
I think there was somebody put a question in, and they come back and said, no, that was national.
Can you share that information with us, maybe, Chair, if it's possible?
But it's, I mean, having withdrawn the voluntary and community projects from the programme, we can no longer spend any ESF money under the 2007-13 programme on the voluntary and community projects, or indeed there were a number of FE college projects and council projects that were part of that priority one. So, you know, we can't use the ESF money for any of that now.
Sorry about calling, you're using departmental money for it? No?
we're using departmental money to fund the projects that were successful under the previous 2007 to 13 programme, and to complete our financial commitments to those projects.
So it does beg the question that given that these community groups were acting on the department's behalf on ESF, is there no resource within the department that could have been used to assist the projects who are under enormous pressure making redundancy payments?
I mean, it's a requirement of any organisation applying under any funding programme to have an exit strategy. And they have to prepare for the eventuality that they won't be funded in a future round, and redundancy payments are not one of the areas of eligible expenditure.
And also voluntary organisations are required to have a certain amount of reserves in order to be able to pay redundancy costs, and that's best practice, and the Charities Commission looks at that as well. So it shouldn't be for any government department to have to pay redundancy costs where a programme was due to come to an end and has come to an end. It's different if we were stopping something in the middle of a programme, which we're not doing in this case.
Tell me, was Proteus used to evaluate or vouch any of the programmes on the older project?
They were, yes.
But when I asked the question, he says there was no outside agency, it was on.
Oh, no, sorry, they have actually, they're not, can I explain myself here? They did vouch, that was part of their role to vouch in addition to other activity, but they have now moved because we cannot claim that money from the European Commission anymore.
So who were they vouching for? Who did they verify, or who did they?
That was carried out similar to our vouching officers.
It seemed unusual, didn't say that, but...
That's actually coming out of departmental money, because that was disallowed, because it was vouching the claims that are disallowed from Europe now.
The point being, Chair, when I asked you was there outside agencies, you didn't say Proteus. It was only when I prompted you that you considered that. In terms of the new programme now, how many existing groups have not had any release of monies?
As far as the 5% is concerned, 51 have now claimed, so there's quite a few just recently in. 43 of those have been paid. For the actual claims themselves, there's 67 claims have been received, and 35 of those have been vouched and are now being processed through the quality assurance, and one of those has been paid.
But how many has not received any money?
In what way, sorry?
I'm getting concerns, particularly from groups who are working on ESF on disability matters, and they have had no monies released because of they're waiting, for example, on the department to approve a job description for that particular role and contracts. So would there be a delay in the department in releasing those information or confirming or consenting to job descriptions and contracts?
That must be on the matching under disability. Disablement Employment Service. That's not part of my end of the funding.
I mean, if you have specific examples of organisations who are waiting for payment, if you want to forward them to department, I'm happy to look into them to try.
No, but I'm not, is there a way for the department, rather than me doing your work for you, which I'm not content to do, I'll pass on concerns rightly if we can get it resolved. The question is, how many groups are presently waiting on confirmation or consent from the department to enable them to make a claim?
I don't understand the area that you're questioning. I can check with the Disability Employment Service to see if there's anything that they've asked of the organisations to allow them to do, because they're match funding some of the organisations.
But if I explain a wee bit further, then there's 3 groups in particular who feel disadvantaged because they're so far behind 5 months and even meeting the targets of ESF because they have no money released, and particularly when they're dealing with, I suppose, young people who would have learning disabilities as well, the difficulties that occur. So I would ask you to examine that thoroughly, given I've given you information now. You don't need any more than that to determine whether there is any delays within the department in releasing
what
the
I
information
did say
necessary.
What I did say earlier was that we did have we had information seminars with all the project promoters They were all present, and there was none of those concerns were raised with us. I was there myself, and no organisation raised those concerns with us. So that's news to us, that there is any kind of issue there. And we did say that if any organisation had difficulties, that they just would phone and we would deal with those difficulties. And what more can we do in terms of saying we're ready to listen? Organisations, any organisation that's put in a claim for an advance payment, if all their documentation is there, we've paid that as promptly as we're able to. And it's only where there's a lack of documentation, and we do go back to say what documents are missing and try and expedite the process.
This is an email, Chair, that I'm reading just a paragraph on it. I'm not going to name the group. Due to the delays, this has put pressure on us as an organisation, both financially and time-wise. Our students, all of intellectual disabilities, and fears that we will have to do a catch-up to meet the ESF timescales. Our students will be put under pressure to achieve the required qualifications by the end of July next year, and this is in the circumstances where they're waiting for a posting contract to be approved before they can submit their claim.
We don't approve posts.
That's not a departmental issue. Any project promoter can submit a claim on a monthly or a quarterly basis. That's entirely their decision. The department does not put in place any prerequisites before an organisation can submit the claim. They submit the claim, and then we will examine it, we'll vouch it, and subsequent to the submission of the claim, we'll advise whether any documentation is outstanding. It seems to me, and again, I'm not aware of the very particular case that you're referring to, but this may be an issue with match funding, which is out of the department's hands. But in terms of there is no impediment to any project promoter submitting a claim at any time, which we will then examine and vouch.
This is a further line on funding to this, Chair. And the Department of Defence, they assure the group that progress is being made, but we've yet to see any movement. So what I'll do, I'll consult with the group, and I'll with their consent, I'll pass the information on. But I think I should ask you to have a look at all those disability ones to ensure there is no delay in the department that's hindering progress being made, particularly for the young people involved. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Sydney?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Can I go back to the issue of, it's been touched on, the lessons learned here. It's something that I asked in previous presentations, and Heather, I think as you says that we want to move forward. We don't fall foul of what went previous to this. Can I ask what confidence and certainty we can move forward? I know, Colin, you've touched on staffing and things that we're doing here, but what confidence, what certainty can we give those groups and those organisations that are making their applications that they will not be jumping through all these hoops and things that went in the past? There has been a total lack of confidence here as we proceeded through this applications for these organisations, and there seems to be that what we are hearing is like, what do we have to do? And Pat's touching on certain things here this morning, but really what I'm asking is, are we in a position going forward that we have overcome all the previous hurdles, and that whatever happens in the future, that we will not be returning to those issues and coming back sitting here debating them in the new programme?
I would say I believe we have overcome the issues and we have learnt the lessons. I mean, we have additional resources. At the minute we're running, if you like, 3 programmes. So the resource that we have at the minute will reduce because we will not require all of it when we're not running 3 programmes at once. The new programme, we are starting with a clean slate. We have a simplified cost methodology. So what we have to vouch now is considerably less than we vouched before, because we don't have to vouch all the individual items of expenditure. Salaries, which should be quite clear from contracts of employment, and then there's a 40% add-on, so that's simpler. We do now have to do more work on the actual outputs and on the participant data that we didn't really do before, so there's an extra dimension to it. There will be more quality inspections as well of what is actually being delivered that hadn't been done before. Staff are all going to go through an accredited training programme to ensure that they have the appropriate skills to be able to do this new work as well as the vouching.
Will those staff either be permanently working here, or would they be jumping in and out of the applications as they come in? I know the last time there's extra staff brought on to try and get through the backlog. But are they now sitting in position?
Yes, we
to
have.
look at new applications going forward?
Yes, we've had a process whereby we have identified what resource is required for the new programme going forward, and those staff will be in post, and they will not jump in and out. They will be there permanently, and they will be the ones that will have gone through the accredited training. Because we're not going to train.
And that will show that consistency here. That
Absolutely,
that's what
yes,
we're looking
it's
for,
about
yeah.
consistency. One of the other issues I think that hampered us in the past was that when a claim came in and there were issues with it, maybe missing documentation, we waited until the documentation came in, and if the organisation was slow in putting the documentation in, we didn't necessarily follow that through. With the new programme, that we will be saying, and whilst it was waiting, nothing was paid. So if there was that delay, then it built up. I would like to look at in the new process that when we go out and vouch, and perhaps some of the documentation is missing, but most of it's there, that we pay what we're able to pay, and then it will be up to the organisation to submit the missing documentation to get the rest of their claim, so that we're not actually sitting there paying nothing, but we're paying what we can as we go through the process. So those are the sorts of improvements that are being made, and I have confidence, and I'm working on this on a sort of weekly basis at least, and I'm determined it is not going to get to the position it was in before.
It's good to know, Heather, you're saying there that the whole applicator, that all's not sitting there just because of a missing piece of document. That money will be released and maybe get. So
yes.
It's a case of everyone working together here.
Everyone working together, and the quarterly forum is part of this working together business, so that organisations can raise issues with us. They don't have to wait for a quarterly forum. They will all have named project officers, and they'll be able to pick up the phone to their project officer. And if they don't get satisfaction, then it can be escalated. And Conor will be managing that team of people to ensure that we don't get into that position.
Just one thing I would add in terms of how can the committee have confidence is that we brought in a former head of internal audit to do a specific project to review comprehensively all our processes. He designed new processes which all the staff are now following and being trained in, that's certainly he really grabbed that issue, and that will leave a very important legacy. So that should mean that the new programme gets off on a firm footing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I think I'll declare an interest here as well. Chair, I now sit on the board of one of the organisations that receive ESF, so I'm aware of some of the issues that have been brought up in our meetings, but I think there may be issues that other organisations are facing as well, so I'd appreciate if you could clarify a few points for me. The trainers within the programme, I understand that the department's pushing them towards the Certificate of Education through the Ulster University, but I understand that course is oversubscribed, and two, there's no provision to pay for fees or travel to get there. So I'm just trying to understand, where that comes into it. I'm also aware that through that Certificate of Education, it's been said that it's okay for them to actually take that course in the last year of the programme, which really kind of seems pointless. My second concern is around TS1 forms. All programme participants have to present themselves to the Jobs and Benefits Office with photo ID, either a passport and electoral identity card, which some participants may not have, and obviously they have to have a qualifying benefit. I have issues around that, particularly for people with disabilities and learning difficulties, maybe getting to the Jobs and Benefits Office and what's that saying. So maybe if you could look at that. The third point, I'm not overly sure in the detail, but there's a financial variance of around 2%. Is that right, in terms of the vouching and your sort of day-to-day expenditure? For smaller organisations who probably are not putting through big sums of money, that 2% variance is quite tight. So if you could maybe explain that. And then just to really come back to the point that you had said about reserves, it is good management to have reserves in the pot. However, I'm working with community and voluntary sectors who are being penalised for having reserves because departments are coming back and saying, well, you've too much money, so we don't think you need us to give you grant funding. So that reserve kind of argument is, I think it's obviously a problem now within your department, but also other departments. So I think there needs to be a sort of wider discussion on that. But it was really just because you had raised it. So if you wouldn't mind clarifying, please.
Okay, I mean, we have had discussions already about the tutor qualifications. The tutor qualifications we require for all of our departmental programmes, and we don't see why participants on ESF should receive anything less than the quality standards of all of our other programmes. Now, we haven't said it's okay for somebody to do the qualification in the last year. What we've said, understanding that the organisations are not necessarily in that place, we've said they've got up to 3 years to get their people through the qualification. The University of Ulster also said if there was sufficient demand, they would put on more courses. So, you know, if there is that demand, we need to look at that. But we don't want there to be any barriers in the way. The fees and the travel costs should be paid out of the 40% indirect costs that simply get added on to the salary cost.
Okay, to come back on that, if it's expected that all the trainers should go through that course, is it really not something that the department should be liaising with? Because I understand it's a departmental sort of course that was organised in conjunction with Ulster University. So if there's demand, well, to be honest, you're creating demand, so I'm not really understanding why the department hasn't maybe almost facilitated places if that's one of your requirements.
Well, I guess that until very recently we weren't aware there was a problem with the places on the course. We had been told there were 150 places on the course and no one has raised the issue of oversubscription with us, so of course we'll liaise with the University of Ulster to see what we can do on that. You know, we've also been asked about equivalencies, so we're looking into that as well. But you know, what I'm saying is that that is our quality standard for tutors on all of our programmes, and that's what we aspire to. But that's why we have given 3 years for the organisations to get to that place. We're not demanding it on day one.
To be fair, I fully appreciate that, but what I am having difficulty is that it is a course that was organised in conjunction with the department. You require it as a qualification on ESF programmes. You also require it for new FE lectures coming through. So I don't really understand why you're only finding out that you don't have enough places on it. You know how many participants you have in ESF, you know how many people have applied for it. If that's what they require, then I don't really think it's a good enough thing to say that, oh, we didn't realise we didn't had enough places, because it is putting pressure on these organisations if that's what you require and now there's no places for them to do it.
If I can just clarify that, we're not requiring that all tutors on ESF programmes hold the CIT.
Okay.
What we're requiring is that where a tutor doesn't hold a previous teacher qualification from a specified list which was sent out to everybody, in those situations, then they must undertake the CIT. So it's, I mean, many tutors who are working on ESF programmes will already have a tutor qualification or an educational certificate of some form on the departmentally specified list. So we're only asking those tutors who don't hold an otherwise recognised teacher training qualification to undertake it. So it's not, just point of clarification, it's not right to say that everybody on the programme is required to undertake it.
Have you set that out in some sort of paper that's who does need to get this training or not? Because that was another concern, that some of the trainers weren't actually aware, do I need it, don't I need it? Does that potentially mean we all need it? It all seemed a wee bit...
We have, over the past couple of weeks, been providing clarification on an ad hoc basis to the people who have been contacting us. I've drafted a memo this week to this effect, which should be going out over the next week or so. And we're holding an information day in October, one of our quarterly forums, at which both the Educational Training Inspectorate and our department's Quality Improvement team will be coming along to provide clarification on those issues.
And that certificate, is it only offered in Jordanstown?
For the moment, yeah.
So what about organisations that do have to come from, you know, different parts of Northern Ireland? I'm thinking sort of particularly in the west, the far west. They're disadvantaged because they live in another part of Northern Ireland, and that money now has to come, their travel costs and fees for that have to come out of their pot, which is kind of unfair in a way.
Okay, it's something I can look into.
Yeah, okay.
Conor, could you provide us a list of acceptable training qualifications?
Of course.
So that the whole committee has it. It's right there, Conor.
The TS1 form, in terms of presenting now to the Jobs and Benefits Office, as I said, there's specific photo ID that's required there. Obviously, if you don't have a driving licence or a passport or even an electoral identity card, there's no other forms available. Is that right? Could you clarify that for me?
Again, this is an issue, I mean, just to clarify, I'm in post 2 weeks, so I'm still in the process of trying to find the toilets in the department. This is an issue which has cropped up on a couple of occasions, and it's something I'm going to be looking at over the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to be asking a couple of members of the team to look into specifically, not just the photographic ID issue, but particularly for those participants in the ESF programmes who do suffer from disabilities, how we can make that process easier for them. And we hope to be working actually with some of the project promoters in a collaborative sense to come up with solutions for that. So we'll be looking at that in the round.
That's a fairly new thing because that didn't happen before.
That's what I was going to say. No, it's not new. That requirement was always there, but it wasn't operated the same across all the projects or even across all our employment service offices. So this is standardising the process.
But I think in standardising it, are we almost even putting pressures on our jobs and benefits office, which are quite stretched as they are. And as I said, there is difficulties for particular people getting to the jobs and benefits office, even with the correct photo ID. Does that mean they're not eligible?
No, that was always there. They were always supposed to do that. So it's not stretching them. It's just that they weren't probably carrying it out in the right way.
But I would imagine there are people who could, verify and vouch in the same way as I have an access NI and someone was able to verify that for me.
Well, this is to verify and also to explain. The important point to remember is they're going there so that they actually understand the impact on their benefit. And to ensure that the training course that they're going on, or whatever it is they're going to participate on, it doesn't affect their benefit. And if it does affect their benefit, there's a decision required by the Social Security Agency. So they're going along there to show that to verify who they are in relation to their benefit. It's explained in the impact on their benefit. They can potentially lose their benefit if they go on a training course that is not one of the prescribed training courses. And if it's something that's new, then they have to fill in a form and it goes to the SSA decision maker to decide if they can stay on their benefit.
Okay. The financial variance, I must admit I'm not sure of the detail of that, but someone made it aware to me that there's a 2% financial variance in the day-to-day spending, and obviously if you're a small organisation that could be down to a couple of pence.
I mean, I'm guessing that what that's referring to is the error rate that is tolerable, and I mean that's something that is set by Europe, by the Commission. There's a 2% error rate, and if we were to submit claims that have more than a 2% error rate, the money would be disallowed above that level. So that's a requirement that's applied to us, and we have to apply that in turn.
Is there any support for that? Because obviously you will appreciate that people will have difficulty trying to maintain that 2% variance, and I am aware that some organisations mean that they have to get it down to the exact pound. So is there any support from the department in order to enable them to do that?
It will be easier going forward because it will be salary based, and salaries should be straightforward, and then the 40% is just added on to that. So hopefully that should solve that problem.
It should be significantly easier in the programme than it was in the old programme. Albeit, I should say, we actually did get the error rates down below 2% across the projects, but there were other issues that led to the interruptions and so on from the Commission.
And the last point really was about the reserves. I suppose I appreciate where you're coming from, but the problem is, yes, I've faced with community involvement groups who have had difficulties because they have reserves and they have managed their programmes in the right way, and they're now being penalised for that. And that's not specific to your department, to be fair, but it happens right across the board. I think it was the point that Pat was trying to say, that we maybe do need to support more of these groups in terms of their exit strategy, because a lot of them are operating on a shoestring because they don't really know what to do, to be fair. That's just a point more than anything. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Members, nobody else. Could I just ask, just in regards to the technical assistance explained at the back, to clarify, that's technical assistance for 0713 programme. I picked you up correctly, that can be used to sort of initiate the 1420 programme?
Not the old. This is the old programme. The new programme will have technical assistance of its own budget, in a budget itself.
How much is that?
I think it's 5 million. I think I can be correct on that, but I'll give you the figure, Chair.
But there was a flexibility to use some of the technical assistance from the 2007 to 13 programme for the department's preparations for the 14 to 20 programme, so there is that degree of flexibility.
Chair, it's 7.7 million euros.
Sorry, Paul, that's not indicated in this table any for how much of this 2.4 million was used to really prep for the 14-20 programme.
No, none of that was used for the new programme. It would have been used.
Well, it would be really the bits. There would be some of the salaries and publicity communication that would have related to the new programme, but we haven't got that breakdown.
So there is. That's what you're telling me?
I wasn't thinking of salaries, sorry, yes. I'm thinking particularly of PR work or anything like that. Yeah.
So then of the technical assistance for the 1420 programme, that's for salaries too?
Yes, you can. You can claim what we can pay out of the technical assistance is preparing for the programme, the management of the programme, the evaluation, the monitoring, any activities around information, publicity.
So the department used some 0713 money as technical assistance to actually prepare for the 1420 programme?
Only an element of the salaries.
How much?
I
Well, we
wouldn't know
can
that
try and
offhand,
work
but
that out. We wouldn't have that figure now.
Right.
And can I say that that's the final position of the technical assistance for the 713? Because I have to finalise the tables for the programme coming into the end of the programme now.
Okay. Pat started down, he's not here at the minute, say just in regard to the new programme and vouching and claims, can just for simple figures, just can you give me the number of claims that have been put in?
For the new
programme.
programme. There's 67 claims have been
Right,
received.
that's all right.
Yes.
How many organisations have requested the 5% advance?
51,
How many have been paid the 5% advance?
43, and all the rest have not got the full documentation. Sorry, of the 5%, we pay without the full documentation as long as they have the proper claim in. So those are the ones that are just being processed.
They've been processed.
Of the claims themselves, 67 have claimed their
51.
actual claims, and some of them have not got the documentation.
Okay, of the 67 then that have been put in,
Yes,
how many have been vouched?
35,
How many have been paid?
1.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Members, anything? Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
You don't have your glasses.
Got all the figures now.
Bosses.
That's what they try to give us. Okay, members, just while we're getting set up for our next session, it's not protocol, but can we just welcome members for the Southwest College? They're very welcome here this morning. I know you're up on a part of an educational visit along with the Committee for Employment and Learning. Folks, can I welcome you here to Stormont and to the committee, and I hope you do get something out of today. You are very welcome. So I think we'll be joining you later on in the Great Hall. So, all right. This committee maybe not as exciting as the one next door to me. You can maybe afford you not to be in here. Okay. Members, moving on to our next briefing session is for the Northern Ireland Council for Ethnic Minorities Voices for Change Report 2014. Can I welcome Mr Patrick Yu, Director of NICEM, and Mr Luke Kelly, Policy Director. Members, the briefing papers at page 74, Voices of Change to Statistical Findings at 79, the mapping views of black minority ethnic peoples at page 80, and the full reports on page 95. Patrick, look, you're very welcome here this morning, so over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, the committee. Give us the opportunity to brief the committee about the Voice for Change research report. I think in your documentation, you have a full copy of the research report. Because of the research, we're looking at the whole integration. So employment and employability is only one of the 6 indicators on integration. So as a result, I also prepared a document which I link all those employment-related areas together. So this one, more or less, I copy and paste all those research and also our key findings related with the employment and employability to give the committee member more easier to read. From that on, I do a much more summary document, which is, our briefing paper, which highlight, those key issues and recommendations. I just give the committee a little bit background about the Voice for Change research. This is part of our EU funding project, partnership with another 4 countries of the EU to looking at integration on the ground. So part of, the idea is, how the people could do the thing from bottom up rather than, the policy always, top down approach. So as a result, we do a lot of work to identify what are the issues. So part of the process is we're doing a very big exercise, a mapping. We receive 670 questionnaire return from different sections of ethnic minority, including over 180 questionnaire from the traveling community as well. As I said, this is, going through, the whole process. Although the Commission's funding specific on third country national is a technical term, means that those are non-EEA, resident, including British Irish. So as a result, it's mainly about those non-EU migrant, more or less. Or those, they started working in UK, but they are not, the full British citizen yet. But I think because of, the process, the number is pretty small. So that's why we are doing a bigger exercise to bring everyone on board. So that's the result of that one. But I think the issue, as usual, this is our fourth time, I think, before this committee, date back to 5 years ago. We're looking at, the whole migration trend since 2004 onward. But we produced our first research report about the impact of the Polish community. So it represents more or less all those A2 countries at that time. So we draw the attention to this committee about the issue about the employment employability issue. I think at that time, the unemployment is a big issue. The Polish community, they're 3 times higher than the local average in terms of unemployment. But it's only, less than 5% they get the benefit. So these are, the figure. But this report, we more or less bring everything together in one single research report based on all other figures. Now, the bigger picture I try, to brief the committee is about our census figure. If you're looking at the census figure, we have 2 sets of data we can make use of. One is the ethnic population based on the ethnic data set. But of course, this is only reflected 1.8% of the ethnic minority population. Those, whites minority, they are under the 98.2% of the white non-aggregated data. So I think it's very important. A lot of, figure, we couldn't, use it because we don't disaggregate these 98.2 white category, which is quite substantial. So based on the 2011 figure, we're talking about 32,414 from, those non-white category. Mainly, from the usual suspect, the Asian subcontinent, the African subcontinent, and also the Chinese, the bigger one, plus others. I think the figure also interesting, the 2011, there's high percentage of mixed marriage between different ethnicity. The second set of data is, coming out from the census question about those born outside from UK, Ireland. So the figure, in the census, more or less reflect A and A2, that 2 main category in the census, which has 35,560. So if you put, the 2 figures compared together, which means that those just A and A2, they almost over half of our ethnic minority population. So you can also see the whole substantial change as a result of our ethnic composition. Now, I try, to put into another level of analysis. If you remember before the people, they come to, after the Friday Agreement, we have, a very good progress in our economy. Before that, most of the ethnic minority, I always refer to the settled one. Either they have a professional job, or they run their business. So that's why unemployment is not a major issue. But now, if you're looking at since 2009, when the world economic recession started, those new migrants, whether they're from EU or non-EU, in particular those working in the healthcare sector, you're talking about Filipino, Indian, subcontinent, and also a little bit, from South Africa as well. So these are there on the low-paid job. So that's why in line with, other research, in particular the Joseph Rowntree Foundation research, it published in 2014. So basically, in-work poverty at the moment, it is a quite big issue related with ethnic minority. In particular, those new migrant community. Now, because, those in poverty, it also means that, these people, they're working, but they're in low-paid job. And it also reflected the characteristic of those new migrants. Now, in our 2009 research on the Polish community, it highlights this group of people. They are high educated. My recollection is over 65 or 70%, they get the first degree. Among that spectrum, 65 to 70%, almost half, they have a master's degree. Around 10%, they have PhD as well. Now, but a lot of these are professionals from their home original country, but they only doing, the low-paid job, in particular in our poultry industry, Moy Park, or related, those big employer. So you can see this is, quite highly related with this committee. You have these high-skilled people, but because they couldn't speak language, the English, so that's why we cannot using their experience, their skills to, to mapping our, skills in here, or how we could, using the skills to put, our economy in place. So this is, that basis, we're looking at, more further about the kind of barrier to employment and employability. Now, the third document, I also, put a very simple one. This is a one-page statistic. So this is the key finding under employment and employability. If you're looking at the first question about, is it your job pay enough for you to live or cover your expenses? There's a very important one for any integration area. So I think quite substantial, 67%, they say they have sufficient. But also it means that another 33%, they're not sufficient at all. So I think it could, help you to reflect the kind of in-work poverty issue on that one. The second question, have you been able to get a job that uses your qualifications, skill, and experience? If you see the statistic, Belfast is only half of using, their qualification and skills and experience. Outside Belfast is much more lower. The lowest will be in Mid-Ulster and downside, there's only 37% using their qualification. Northwest, you're talking about 45, still less than half of, those they're using their qualification and experience. So this is another bigger issue impacting on the whole barrier. Then the third question is, do you feel or have you felt that you experienced discrimination, less favorable treatment in your workplace because you are perceived as a foreigner or member of ethnic minority group? So more or less, it is just less than half, 49%, they have that experience. With also quite significant in terms of, the treatment of, the differential treatment and also discrimination in the workplace. Then the last one I found more interesting. It also, in line with all our research over the last few years about unemployment issue. So if you lost a job, what you would do? Over 85%, of the respondents are, I will try to find another job. Belfast 85, Northwest 93, Mid-Ulster 89. So you can see ethnic minority, they have a very strong work ethic. It also in line with, the Dell research also published in 2009, the Oxford Economics, they did, a specific one about the impact of migrant. So one of, the key recommendation also highlight the work ethics of ethnic minority. That's why the employer, they are highly pleased about those new migrants. Apart from the social security or health from the state, it's only 28%. And I think the Northwest, they are much lower, only 6.5%, they would like you to apply for the benefit, 29% in Mid-Ulster. So this gives you some idea about, the nature of, those new migrants. Then I go to the barrier. The first one is about the qualification and experience. I think it is one of, the most difficult one. Like any other migrant, when you come into a new country, you have no understanding about the system, what the requirement, even though a lot of people, they still don't understand, the kind of, because we have very strong fair employment law. So when you apply, you need to put a very detail about how you qualify those so-called, essential criteria. A lot of ethnic minority people, they don't understand that. And at the same time, in lack of, the kind of support or, telling, these people, you need to fulfill, that obligation. So I think this is, one of those mismatch. But also, looking at those, they have high qualified, but they couldn't get a job. There are quite a lot of issue over there. Not only about just, the glass ceiling, in particular those, they get the professional job. But also, a lot of people, they couldn't get the job in the first place. I think if you're looking at the detail in the in the detail one about the focus group, they get more and more detail about individual experience. These experiences are quite common. Take for example, like the employer. If you are not get the GCSE pass in here, or if you have no GCSE, a lot of employers, they will not consider your application is relevant. Even though quite substantial number of people, they get the master in here as well. So you can see that kind of disadvantage we are talking about. Of course, the experience from other, there are two issues. The qualification, because we are part of the EU, so they have, so-called a white list of those countries. Depends on which university you graduate in your original country of origin. So that, if you're not recognized by the EU, so the UK as a whole, your qualification not being recognized either. But a lot of people, they don't understand that process. So I think over the year, they're already, to promote, the kind of NIREC system, so that, they could go into the whole system, so that they will verify whether your qualification are, recognized or not. As I said, even though if your qualification are recognized, it doesn't mean that the employer will take you in the first place. You're still, being vulnerable if you don't have the local qualification in here, in particular the GCSE. So as a result, all this, put the migrant people, they are very frustrated when they, try to apply for the job. Then the second interrelated issue is about the English proficiency issue. I think in Northern Ireland, as part of the UK, in terms of the ESOL, the English for speaker of other languages, this is the standard test for all those non-British, non-Irish, speaker about, their English proficiency. This is almost, the test for everything, including your basic communication. Now the Home Office, when you try to apply for immigration status, whether you apply for permanent residency or apply for naturalization, you must pass the ESOL English test. And of course, for us, more important is how ESOL could help you to move career. So how you could, join some special English class so that, you could, using your previous experience, whether you are, a lawyer, whether you are accountant, whether you are, a civil servant or other professional, you could, using your experience, but because you don't have, the level of English. So I think that is, the critical area we would like to ask, this committee looking at. Now, currently, surprising me, Northern Ireland is the only region of the United Kingdom. We are not in line with the policy in the GB about ESOL is the essential skills. I think Anna maybe, remind me, because when I first came to this country 25 years ago, basically, ESOL is an essential skill policy, just like literacy and numeracy. So you must, provide those cheap English class. But I think possibly, when the new migration trend started in 2000 onward, the college, they find out there's a good opportunity to screw up money. So that's why they, I can see, all those redesignation to the adult learning starting from that process. Do you aware how much money the college charge for 3 months English class for, whether you are in elementary, intermediate, or high level? Guess, can you guess how much? Just for a 3 months course for those non-EEA citizens. over £330 per 3 months course. So who could afford it? Especially if you are on the low-paid job. And also most of these courses are organizing during the daytime. So it is user unfriendly for those if you have your job. Or if you are working in shift duty, it is much more difficult. So that's why I would like to raise this issue to the committee. There should be redesignated ESOL as the essential skills, so that we are in line with the whole UK policy. There is an implication there. It's about they must provide these classes for those. As I said, the English or the ESOL language, it is not just about the career side. What I refer to English for life concept. Because you need to have basic communication. You also need to apply for your naturalization, immigration status. That's right, using the English to moving jobs. So I would like to ask this committee to consider whether there should change or redesignate ESOL as an essential skills rather than under the current policy. It is adult learning, so that the department have no obligation whatsoever to provide these basic English class. But I think over the last 5 months we talk a lot about the refugee crisis, and then increasingly people talking about immigration. So if we can't communicate, there's no communication. Now, I did a lot of European projects. That's why when I listened in the last section, I sympathize for the department, because the European Commission, they're very, very bureaucratic and strict. So I bought a 30 kilo of document to Brussels by the end of August because of this project. So you can understand, all those requirements. But one thing, there are a lot of things we could learn from our European, partners. Take for example, like in the Scandinavian side, as well, those in the northwest side of, Europe. More or less, if you are asylum refugee or those migrants, in particular, you have, those free languages class. Especially asylum refugee, if you can't pass, the basic test within the first 6 months, your benefit will be deducted slightly, has a deca of, negative, punishment. So that's why if you can see other Scandinavian countries, the migrant and also the refugee asylum seeker, they're quite integrated in terms of language over here. Then the next barrier is about accessing to work. As I already mentioned early on, a lot of people, they don't familiarize our system, our application form, and also the competency-based approach, and also the proof of those qualifications. So this already link up with the first one I already mentioned. I'm not going to more detail in this one. But one thing is very important: if they could not get access to work, which also means that the family income will be reduced, and then most of them, they are living in that kind of in-work poverty. I know there are lots of those, whether they are EEA or non-EEA, most of them those migrants, they have more than one job. It is not uncommon. Maybe very odd in our experience, but for those migrants, they are not uncommon, because they need to survive for the whole family. Then the next one is about the experience of work. I mentioned earlier on a lot of the experience, they will not count in here, and also the direct experience about discrimination in the workplace, intimidation in particular. So I think we need to think about how we could tackle this difficulty issue. Bear in mind also, in our employment guidance and practice, especially those people, they never joined the union. They could not, there will be no representation from union if they have any problem. We still have, the internal grievance procedure, which means if you complain your employer, you need to bring your case with your, internal first. And if you don't have any trade union, in most cases, there is lack of collaborative evidence by the colleagues. because no colleague will be help you, to provide evidence against the employer. So in most cases, we saw a lot of, those sad cases as a result, and then they were being, fired afterward, or, they were being, continue being discriminated as a result. So that's why it is a bigger issue. And as I said, in the data showing, 49% of these people, they experience discrimination, intimidation in workplace. I need to draw attention to this committee. We need to find the way to tackle this issue. I think both the Quality Commission and also the DEL, they also have the duty to tackle this problem. Then the last one is also the very important one. If your right being infringed, what you could do. Currently, there is very little place the people could go. Previously, NICEM and the Migrant Center, we provide a lot of advocacy advice, in particular, those general advice. But because of the funding cuts, there's no longer, we could provide. But far more interesting, it's outside, this committee, it's more DSD side. You have the local CAB, Independent Advice Center, but this organization, they get all the funding from the government, which NICEM never get any funding from them. They couldn't, provide any interpreter. If someone could not speak English, asking for help, asking for advice. So we have been raised this issue many times to the DSD, especially the head of the VCU, but we go nowhere. So it can give you some idea about, if ethnic minority migrant, if they could not, access to justice, then they will have no confidence in this country. And of course, the integration are much, much more difficult. I also aware at the moment that they also, put forward a consultation about the reform of the tribunal. But maybe I could give you a little bit about what NICEM's, position in the area. It all linked up with, the single utility bill previously. We put very clear cut about what we want. I think currently the tribunal system, it held no one. I don't think, the migrant, they would like to go to sue the employer because, they would like to settle the issue as soon as possible. But under the existing system, there's no way you could, doing quick and then try to make, a statutory decision. That's why in our submission to the single bill, we suggest using the model in the South, set up, the kind of, the first protocol of, a complaint, so that, there will be a statutory regime, they will investigate without any lawyers. And then the agency, they will, publish, the decision, whether, the employer right or the employee rights. So if you're not, satisfied on the decision, because this is a statutory decision, then you could appeal, then going through, the tribunal process. And also bear in mind, in this country, unlike in the GB, we don't have the appeal system in relation to any tribunal in the whole Northern Ireland. So that's why, it will go, if you are not happy about the decision, it goes straight to the High Court, which is very costly. And I think we could afford, in that kind of employment cases, if you don't have any representation. So I think, this is, part of the jigsaw, have very negative impact on ethnic minority, on migrants. So maybe I just stop here because of the recommendation, it is self-explanatory, and just see any questions from the committee.
Patrick, thank you very much. Patrick, in regard to the recognition of qualifications gained abroad, what current status is there at the minute? Is it solely EEA countries?
No, there is a system run by, the European Commission, and the UK also, the British government also joined part of it. There's a computer-based verification process. So basically, the EU, they only recognize a different university in each country, not all university.
Sorry, it's at the UK level rather
Yes.
than...
Yes. So basically, if any migrant, they need to verify their qualification. Now currently, DEL, they provide that kind of free services. You could go to those centers. I think there are, my recollection is 3 or 4 centers spread across Northern Ireland. So you could go there and then verify. Now there are certain, recommendations like in the report over here, some of those involving at the focus group, they suggest, in particular, if you are under, the benefit, because sometimes, you get the qualification over there, but your original, CV or your original, paper qualification, it is in another language. So sometimes, that's why they suggest whether the benefit office could translate, those certificates so that it will facilitate when they go to, the NIREC system, so that they will get, the answer almost, within a few days.
Okay. In regard to I suppose the questions on employment and learning, I noticed some of the comments, we were asked to do the ugly jobs, the nasty jobs. Did you look at anything about in regards to 0 hours?
Now, that was our last meeting with this committee. We highlight I think my recollection, it is 2-3 years ago now, is in relation to the agency worker reserve we done for the Filipino community. Now, at that time, I highlight to this committee and also highlight to Dell, we have a meeting with them, highlight, the migrant is not uncommon using 0-hour contract. But now it become, the common standard. For me, it is, far more worse. Because if you are on 0-hour contract, so basically, you couldn't know what your job is about. You don't know, how many hours, maybe this week you only have, 20 hours. Next week, maybe 2 hours only. And I think it will have very negative impacting on the income. So that's exactly why most of the migrant workers, they are under the so-called work poverty or in-work poverty.
Okay. Thank you. In your key findings on the statistics, the percentage charge you gave, in regards if you lost your job, what would you do? Questionnaire. For North West, apply for social services, that's, I think you highlighted, was it very low, was it 6.5%?
Yes, the North West is very low.
Yeah.
Yes.
Could
Yes.
I just maybe ask you to verify it? My reading, I looked at your questionnaire, whereas the questionnaire actually says you can tick more than one.
Yes.
I'm just concerned that the North West have only ticked one box, because when you add up all those figures, it gives you exactly 100%, whereas if you look at Belfast and Mid-Ulster, there seems to be a correlation where applicants did pick more than one subject, if you know what I mean. So I think that 6.5% is maybe artificially low.
You might, interpret in such a way, because if you're looking at, the Northwest, it's almost run up for 100.
Yeah.
So that is, might be, the case it should be. But having said that, if you're looking at, the other two regions, we still, talking about, less than 30%. It's pretty low.
Yeah.
And I think for the Northwest is quite unusual, because, this is, what we always see, this is, the region, they have less job compared with, Belfast or other region. But at the same time, these people, they keen, to get a job. They find different way, to find job. So that's why I will not, dispute, 65% maybe, pretty low, or, they only take one box.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Anna?
Thank you, Chair. Patrick, Tony, it's been a while since I read the report that came out a few months ago. I want to say by and large, actually, people that you interviewed, or the researcher interviewed, were quite content with living in Northern Ireland.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they were quite satisfied with health, with education. But it's employment that was the issue for them, finding jobs and having their qualifications recognized. And I can understand the frustration. If you've got a master's degree in your own country, you would be a professional in a good job. But if you move to another country, you're working in factories. And it is inequality in many ways, and I think we really need to look into that. But even with that, I think with that equivalent test, it's not universal. As Patrick said, a lot of universities are not recognised. I had one constituent who had a degree in physiotherapy, and the trust asked her, the trust did not recognize her qualification and asked her to do 1,000 hours of volunteer work before they would give her a job.
I remember you raising that, this is the committee on it. Yeah.
This woman spent a year doing 1,000 hours volunteer work. I mean, that is just so unfair. I mean, how can, I mean, I know this is probably a whole EU issue. I mean, how can we influence that?
I think this is one part, exactly why, you know, if you see our recommendation, we would like, you know, to see whether Dell could do much more benchmark research about, you know, utilization of the skills, and then help them to benchmark to what the industry needs in terms of, you know, what potential training they could take in order to be on that, you know, industry. For me, it's very important. Now, I know that in our recommendation, we have a lot of things. During the process, I also looking at, you know, this committee. You also commission research about the economic inactivity in Northern Ireland. And if you're looking at, you know, the recommendation and the strategic action framework provided by Dell, my immediate, you know, question asks, why this never talk to ethnic minority? I think the committee should have a very crucial role to play, how we mentioning race into all Dell's strategic action, you know, aims and also activities. Now, I'm looking at page 16 and 17, so the appendix 2, Economic Inactivity Strategic Framework Action Plan. All these key actions are relevant to, you know, our research finding and everything. But why no official, nor, you know, program activity may be delivered by voluntary sector? No one talked to, you know, migrants, ethnic minority about you could join this one, you could join the other one. So for me, it is very important. If we don't have the mainstreaming on race, then we were much more difficult. We are always, you know, being, you know, excluded as a result. So I think, you know, it will be easier become institutional discrimination and, you know, structural inequality as a result. So that's why a lot of things, I'm not, you know, asking you to reinvent the wheel. A lot of good program already within Dell. But I think how far, you know, Dell could promote more with ethnic minority. So the ethnic minority could using, you know, these mainstreaming program to improve their employment and employability.
Chair, I asked, I think a few meetings ago, about whether Dell, I think it was for Training for Success, whether they would accept ESOL to be part of essential skills, and I think I was told no. You know, they're not going to do that. I mean, is there any way we can maybe ask the department?
I think we could ask again, Anna. We could also send the report through to the department for comment.
Yeah. £330 for 3 months is just outrageous.
I think something we can forward 3.5.
Yeah. I mean, very few people can afford it, particularly if you're on a low-paid job.
Okay. Claire?
Thanks, Sharon. Patrick, look, you're very welcome. It's really to come back to, I suppose, what Anna had talked about as well in terms of the communication. What is the department's role in respect of people who come to live here whose language or English isn't their first speaking language, in order, you know, as a process of integration? Because again, you know, I have people come into my offices and, you know, I'd said, has she tried looking for an English speaking course? Number one, she can't afford the £300. So then there are a number of community and voluntary groups who are offering something similar, but those classes are all oversubscribed, so there's just no opportunity for that. So does Dell have a responsibility in respect of people who are coming over here?
I think so. If you're looking at the UK policy, maybe just, you know, early notification. Our AGM will be coming, you know, in November for 23rd of Friday 23rd, possibly. We will launch another research report about the ESOL. Now, interesting, not only in UK, also in here, no one, you know, to assess what level of ESOL in relation to the whole national curriculum. So we asked a former retired English teacher who lead up, you know, the English class for the DE, in one of the library board, and he find out, the policy issue. In the GP, if it is under the essential skills, which means that, all the local government, they must provide the free English class through different channels, in particular for those, local volunteering community sector, alongside with those like the college. They could, doing in both sides. Some they working in conjunction together with the local college. They will provide free classes, in the locality, in those, evening, not, during the daytime. Now, I must emphasize, in that research, we also have one college in particular. They have a very good practice. They accommodate the needs of the local ethnic minority. They run the free classes, by using the teacher, provide, during the evening. So there's some good thing, and also that college also, agree they could do the, what they call, the tailor-make, for the industry English class for, different career development as well. So a lot of things already there, but, how far we could bring them back to here, and of course, the bigger issue is about the funding. Maybe my suggestion is, at the beginning, we should not be too ambitious, but we set up, the certain, amount first, and then using both the college and also the civil society to link this English class in different parts of, the Long Island.
It seemed a long time ago, Chair, I started the first ever ESOL class
Yes.
for Chinese residents in 1979. And we still have the same problem
Yes.
of people coming here not being able to learn English
And it
properly.
just doesn't seem a long time
Yeah.
ago, as a long time.
Giving you my age.
Members, anything else?
Sure.
Sydney?
Thank you. Patrick, thank you for the presentation. Clerk touched on it there, voluntary and community groups. I do know of some groups who are working down that field. Is there more work that could be done in that aspect and more funding put to them to maybe bring those languages forward, and get them the language they require?
Yes, I think at the moment there is a church-based organization called Embrace. So they, coordinate. Well, more or less, they do an information trail. So anyone, or any local volunteering and community organization, if they run free English class, then they will put all the information into the refresh it, so that it's in internet. It also distributes in different parts. Like in our office, we always have the people asking when will be the next free English class. So we give out all those information. So I think it's very useful if you could have that kind of coordination.
Are those people getting that information to them to direct them in those
Yes.
to those organisations?
Yes.
To ensure that if there are places there and
Yes.
opportunities to learn the language that they can enrol for it.
Yes.
That's being done.
Yes. Now, this is, when we talk about those English class provided by the voluntary community sector, I think we try, to classify these for the communication purpose. Now, we would like to, get these people to go into accredited training, like those, provided by the college, because it's very important. If you can't, get accredited, some of the people, they will have limited free movement. They, for example, they could not apply for a permanent residency. As a result, if they couldn't, pass the ESOL English test, or, moving jobs. So that's why, for me, it's very important. The communication is the first level. Then we were encouraging them to go for those tests. That's exactly the main reason why we do the second piece of research about ESOL language. Because we identify different providers. To be fair to say at the moment, it is a big business by certain language provider. They screw up the money. They providing what we call tutoring class for you to test, but there's no guarantee about quality about those English class. Now, for me, it's very important. If there is a business case, why couldn't we could doing better if they're coordinating with it? Now, I always emphasize certain class should not be everything free, but it must be in lower fee so that, it encourages people to enroll it, because they need to pay the certificate, they need to pay the testing, that kind of things. So this is something, we would like to encourage, different means to encourage those community to take part in that kind of test.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Just one question. Patrick, thanks for the presentation. It was fairly extensive and contained a lot of information. Tell me, you mentioned the advice sector. You mentioned CIB.
Yes.
And also you have the independent advice sector, and you have a number of specialist advice centres. Are there any that stand out in the way of offering assistance in terms of providing interpreters, or the wide range of advice that Mellon would receive funding? Is there any that stand out, or is there any particular thing? I know most of us would probably go through DSD, anything, but is there any of them that offer a wraparound service for people coming in to deliver work?
Now, I think the problem, as usual, if you're looking at the advice sector, their funding also cuts. So that's why everyone try to protect themselves. They also try to claim I've been provided services for ethnic minority. But you're asking them, do you have interpreter? So, if someone could not speak English, could they get advice? Now, we have a very painful period when we're closing down our advice work last end of July last year. We need to signposting the people. We send, we have a list of all, from Belfast or outside Belfast. We were telling them, where they go, who they should contact. And funny enough, these people signposting back to us. And then they're telling them they couldn't speak the language, they couldn't provide the interpreter. We raised this issue to the head of the VCU. The head of VCU has been, delivered the speech at the Migrant Center AGM over the last 2 years. He knows the situation very well, because at that time, we told them, we have our last year's funding. We would like to looking at who will take care of it afterwards. Because, the whole, I must say, those advice sector, they protect themselves. We were always being squeezed out, because we get the funding is from the lottery, not from, the DSD. So that is, how we could, doing all the things. If you're interested, we could send you all those, figure, because we have a very good monitoring data. We're using a lot of monitoring data. I think over the period, we talked about, we provide, at least 5,000-6,000 cases. We also recost a lot of money as a result because of the successful intervention. So we have all those, figure I could, send to the committee.
What I advise people to do is Fridays tell them, bring someone who can speak English for you. But there are circumstances when it's about debts, about, other issues, and it's very difficult to bring someone to talk for you.
I know that there are probably three key organisations. You have CIB, you have the Independents, and you have like the Law Centre and places like that. Have you sat down with them and met? Because obviously there are a considerable amount of people who come from our countries and lived here that require the assistance and help. Have you met them, and it's just to speak about what your requirements are as a community?
I think we have been talking to different, provider. For NICEM, the one and the foremost important is immigration advice. And now at the moment, all the immigration advice gone. Law Centre also lost, their money or lost their tender. So at the moment, in the past, NICEM provided Tier 1 immigration advice. We also closing last September. As a result, we finished the funding with Atlantic Financial Fee. Now, basically, at the moment, there's no one, could provide these very basic rights.
No.
And we have been applying for funding before. Certain, organization, not organization, I think the Belfast State Council, they say this is the lawyer's work, suppose you should not do it. But when we run the asylum service for Northern Ireland from 2000 to 2008, we couldn't signposting any of our clients, those asylum seekers, to any legal practice in Northern Ireland, because their quality, their willingness to do that kind of job are quite low. And of course, what they want is the legal aid. So that's why we are not, first time we raise this issue to the Law Society, to the Home Office, to others. Because that's exactly, the problem now those migrants they are facing. And I think I know very well, especially, when we're going back to the Chinese community, a lot of Chinese, they don't trust any lawyers at all. Because when they go into the court for litigation, they more or less, represent the other side rather than represent the client.
Messed up so many cases as well, Patrick, because of the lack of knowledge and lack of expertise in dealing with immigration issues.
Yes.
Well, some, not all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Members?
Sir, is there anything to say specifically on that? Is there anything that we can do as a committee?
I think one of the things we can do, probably, we'll send your report and the recommendations to the department, Patrick, also with the Hansard copy of your evidence today for the specifics you raised to get.
Can I, draw attention, for, a couple of key things, we would like to add into your report. One is, the ESOL, whether, we should designate that, ESOL has an essential skill. The second part also very important. There are some good research done by Dell previously. In particular, the previous one, looking at, the migrant. On that piece of research, they also suggest, Dell should continue to do the benchmark research about the skills, the shortage skills of those migrants, and also the Northern Ireland as a whole, so that how we could using their skills for, here, rather than we use a lot of money to train up a new person. So for me, this is, key part. And of course, the whole mainstreaming issue. So if, Dell, they mainstreaming race into all their action, then I think it will help a lot already there. Thank you.
The racial equality strategy should be able to do that.
Yes.
We still haven't got
Whenever
it.
it comes forward.
When it comes out, yeah.
Okay, Patrick, look, thank you very much for your
Thank
time
you.
this morning. Thank you. Members, any other business? There.
I'm not sure if it's in our forward work programme, but are we doing anything on the Assured Skills programme?
Check it out and see.
Just there's 3 academies, as far as I know, out for application. And it would just be interesting to see how that's going. And
Give us that. Right, we'll pull it in. Forward. Or is there anything else? Members, date, time and place of next meeting, Wednesday, 30th of September, 2015, 10 a.m., room 29, Parliament Buildings. Thank you, meeting adjourned.